Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to talk about something really fascinating, a tradition where time isn't just a number, it's a name. It's a whole system where an entire country can just reset its calendar, giving every new chapter of its history this really unique, kind of poetic identity.
Okay, so just imagine this for a second. You wake up one morning, and the year, well, it's not just a number anymore. It has a name, a whole new identity. One day you're living in, say, year 31 of a certain era, and then bam, the very next day you're in year 1 of something totally new. For the whole country, time just resets.
You know, for a lot of us, the most recent time we saw this happen was back in 2019, right? The whole world was watching as this new name was unveiled on live TV, Reiwa. And just like that, that one word marked the end of the Heisei era and kicked off a brand new chapter for Japan.
But here's the thing, this whole Reiwa era, it's not just some modern ceremony. No way. It's actually the latest link in a chain that goes back over 1,300 years. So to really get how we got here, we've got to go way, way back, all the way to the beginning.
So what's really interesting is that as uniquely Japanese as this whole system feels today, its roots, they're actually not in Japan at all. The whole idea was imported and then, adopted and completely transformed into something new.
Okay, so this system is called Gengo. Let's break that down. The character Gen means beginning, and Go means name. So it's literally a beginning name for a chunk of time. Instead of just, counting years one after another from some single point in history, the Gengo system chops history up into these distinct eras, and each one gets its own cool, poetic name.
So where did it all start? Well, the whole concept actually began in China, way back around 115 BC, with Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty. This idea of naming eras eventually made its way over to Japan, probably brought back by imperial envoys. And then, in 645 AD, right in the middle of this huge political shakeup called the Taika Reforms, they were trying to centralize the whole government, Japan adopted its very first Gengo. And what was it called? Taika, which is perfect because it means great change. After a bit of on-again, off-again use, the system finally became official and permanent in the year 701.
All right, so back in those early centuries, the rules for changing an era name were, they were totally different from what we see today. An emperor might actually live through several different Gengo changes during their reign. And a lot of the time, the reason for the change had absolutely nothing to do with them.
The reasons for a change could be really poetic, almost mystical. A new era might be declared just to celebrate what they called a shozui, which is basically a super lucky sign. For example, the Reiki era, that started because someone found this rare, really uniquely patterned turtle and gave it to the court. Or the Keiyun era, which was named for some beautiful, lucky-looking clouds. But it wasn't always good news. It worked the other way, too. A new Gengo could be a way to hit the reset button on bad luck after something terrible happened, like an earthquake or a famine.
But it wasn't all just about luck and superstition, A Gengo change could also be used to mark a huge national achievement. Take the Wado era, for example. That one was announced to celebrate the very first minting of Japan's official copper coins. It was like a way of stamping that moment in time, saying, hey, this is important.
So this system of frequent, sometimes kind of random changes just kept going for over 1,000 years. But then, as Japan rocketed into the modern age in the 19th century, this ancient tradition was about to get its biggest shakeup ever. Right, so during the Meiji Restoration, Japan was modernizing like crazy, and the Gengo system got simplified right along with everything else. They made a new rule, and it was a big one. One emperor, one era name. That's it. From then on, the name would only change when a new monarch took the throne.
And this really shows you just how big of a deal that was. Before 1868, a single emperor's reign could be chopped up into a bunch of different Gengo. But after 1868, an emperor's entire reign became linked to just one era. And that's why we have the famous modern eras that you've probably heard of: Meiji, Taisho, Showa, Heisei, and now, of course, Reiwa.
Okay, so when you have a history this long, you just know there are going to be some wild records and really cool bits of trivia. So let's dive into some of the numbers behind these names.
The difference in how long these eras lasted is just staggering. On one end, you've got the Showa era, which went on for more than 62 years. And then on the complete opposite end, you have the Ryakunin era, which was over and done in just 2 months. Can you believe that?
And let's be super precise here. The Showa era lasted 62 years and 14 days.
Just let that sink in. That's not just the longest Gengo in Japanese history, it is the longest recorded era name of any country that ever used the system, and that includes China, where the whole thing started. That's a true world record right there.
And here's a little fun fact for you, a little piece of trivia. You know how pretty much every Gengo has 2 kanji characters? Well, for a short little period back in the 8th century, there were actually 5 exceptions that used 4 characters. It's just a little wrinkle in the story that shows you how deep and complex this history can be.
Okay, so let's circle all the way back to where we started, that moment when Reiwa was revealed. But now we're looking at it with more than 1,000 years of history in our back pocket, and you'll see why the choice of this particular name was such a historic moment.
So, the name Reiwa actually comes from the Manyoshu. This is Japan's oldest and most treasured collection of poetry. The characters themselves were inspired by a little intro to some poems about plum blossoms, and the whole vibe is about, beautiful order and harmony.
And here is the absolute key takeaway. For over 1,300 years, every single Gengo, without exception, was chosen from classic Chinese literature. Reiwa, this is the very first time in history that an era name was picked from Japan's own classic literature. That wasn't just a choice, it was a massive cultural statement. And that kind of brings us to a final big question, doesn't it? I mean, in our super connected digital world where time is measured in nanoseconds and we're all synced up across the globe, what's the point of a tradition like this? What role does it play? Well, maybe it's a powerful reminder that there's more than one way to measure our trip through history. It's this incredible bridge connecting the deepest traditions of the past with whatever comes next.